The dinner had gone cold by the time Sarah stepped through the front door. I wasn't upset about the temperature of the food. I was focused on the way she avoided my eyes as she placed her keys on the mahogany console. There is a certain kind of silence that comes before a storm, and our kitchen seemed to hum with it. She didn't offer a greeting. Instead, she asked for a glass of water, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she reached for the cabinet. "I think I need a break," she said. The words landed between us like lead weights. I didn't flinch. I didn't ask why. I simply looked at her and asked how long she planned to be gone. She seemed caught off guard by the lack of resistance. "Just a week," she said hesitantly. "To find myself." I stood, cleared my plate, and told her that if she needed a week to find herself, she could have a lifetime to keep searching. Then I went upstairs and pulled her suitcases down from the top shelf of the closet. The sound of the zipper echoed through the room as I folded her blouses with calm, clinical precision. She stood in the doorway, confusion spreading across her face before slowly turning into panic. "You're not even going to fight for us?" she asked. I told her there was no us left to fight for if she had already checked out mentally to the point of needing a sabbatical from her own life. A marriage isn't a job you take a vacation from. It's a commitment, a state of being. If she needed an exit, I was willing to provide the door. She tried to explain that it was only stress, that work had become overwhelming, and that she felt she had lost her individual identity. I kept packing. I placed her shoes into the side compartments and never raised my voice. I told her that people who truly value their partners don't seek distance to solve internal struggles. They seek closeness. By asking for a break, she had already declared that I was the problem she wanted to escape. When I handed her the suitcase, it was heavy, packed for much longer than a week. She accepted it reluctantly, her eyes searching mine for a crack in the armor. She found none. I walked her to her car beneath the dim glow of the streetlights. The air was crisp, and the neighborhood sat in complete stillness. I watched her drive away, the red glow of her taillights fading into the darkness. Then I went back inside and locked the door. The house felt lighter. When I entered the office, I noticed her laptop sitting on the desk. She had forgotten it in her rush to leave. I had no intention of becoming a voyeur, but the device was open and the screen was still active. A messaging application sat minimized in the corner. I clicked it. The name at the top was Mark. He was a consultant she had mentioned several times over the previous 6 months. The messages weren't physical in nature, but they were deeply intimate. They were filled with complaints about our predictable life and his promises of a more exciting, spontaneous future. He was the one who suggested the break. He told her she needed a week of clarity to determine whether our marriage was worth saving. She agreed. She even told him she was coming over as soon as she broke the news to me. I photographed every exchange. I didn't feel rage. I felt the cold logic of a man who had just been handed a detailed map of a minefield. I finally knew exactly where I stood. I was the safety net. Mark was the trapeze. I emailed the photographs to myself and closed the laptop. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "I made a mistake," it read. "I'm at a hotel. I can't stop crying. I want to come home." I didn't respond. At 6 a.m., she called. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was frantic, full of apologies and desperate claims that she had realized her place was with me. By 8 o'clock, I was sitting in my lawyer's office. I handed him the digital files and told him I wanted a clean break. No alimony, no prolonged battles, just a fair division of assets and a signature. He asked whether I wanted to try mediation. I told him that trust is like a mirror. Once shattered, you can glue it back together, but the cracks will always distort the reflection. I'd rather have a new view. Sarah arrived at the house around noon. I met her on the porch and didn't allow her inside. She looked exhausted, her eyes swollen from a sleepless night. She started to speak, but I raised a hand. I told her I knew about Mark. The color drained from her face instantly. "It wasn't what it looked like," she whispered. I told her it looked exactly like a woman treating her husband as a backup plan while she auditioned a replacement. I told her she didn't truly want me. She wanted the security I provided while she searched for excitement somewhere else. She tried to move past me, but I blocked the doorway. "This house is no longer your sanctuary," I said. "You asked for space, and I've decided to give you an unlimited amount of it." She began sobbing, insisting it was only an emotional lapse and that nothing physical had happened. I told her emotional betrayal is often worse than physical betrayal because it involves the deliberate theft of intimacy. "You gave him the parts of your mind that belong to our marriage," I said. "You can keep them." I handed her the remaining bags I had packed while she was gone. She asked where she was supposed to go. I suggested she call the man who convinced her to leave in the first place. Then I stepped inside and closed the door for the final time. The months that followed became an exercise in routine and silence. I changed the locks and redirected the mail. She tried reaching me through friends and family, but I remained unavailable. I wasn't being cruel. I was being consistent. If I welcomed her back, I would be teaching her that my boundaries were negotiable. I would be telling her that she could disrespect our marriage as long as she apologized afterward. I refused to build a life around someone else's confusion. The divorce was finalized during the winter. We met one last time to sign the final papers. She looked older. The spark she believed she would find with Mark had clearly faded. He disappeared the moment the situation became real and complicated. She asked if I could ever forgive her. I told her I already had, but forgiveness was for my peace, not her return. We walked out of the courthouse in opposite directions. I drove home, sat in my quiet living room, and poured myself a drink. For the first time in years, the air around me felt completely still. There were no more hidden messages, no more guessing, no more carefully filtered versions of the truth. There was only the reality I had built for myself, and that's when I realized something important. A stoic heart is not a cold heart, it's a protected one. I had lost a wife, but I had regained a version of myself that no longer depended on someone else's validation to remain whole. The silence was no longer a burden, it had become a reward.